Okay, and welcome back to our lesson. Today we once again have our Vic Viper, and today we're going to add some movement. So anyone who's played some video games has noticed the controls they use are either the arrow keys or the what they call WASDF, WASDF. And today we're going to do that. Now, you might be thinking you could have used this event over here called the event and put a key to it and did the movement. But that's really not the proper way to do it. While you could do it, that creates a lot of threads, and one of the things I talked about last time in multi-threading is you could do that, but when you do, it takes up a lot more resources because the computer constantly has to be checking if you've clicked this or if you've clicked that, and so on and so forth. So it's not really the most efficient. So today we're going to do it in a loop where it's going to just repeatedly check if you've pressed the key. And in order to do that, we actually need to use another control called an if-then. And an if-then basically does a check to say if something happens, then do something else. So right now, it's not doing anything, and it won't do anything because nothing's happening, and we're not trying to detect anything. So for example, whenever it tries to detect, it's trying to sense, so we have to use one of these sensings. So when the key W is pressed for the traditional shooter people, I want it to move, and I can move it 10 steps, whatever. And you'll notice as it runs, nothing's happening, but then when I press W, it moves forward. Now, of course, that would change if I pointed the thing here. It would kind of move in that direction, right? Once I have the flag clicked, it would now move there, and if I turned it left, it would move in a completely different direction when I hit the W key. So it always moves in that direction, which isn't really what you want in a video game. What you want is what's called 8-axis movement, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's the 8 different corners that they call it. And that's basically up, down, right, down, down left, left, up, and up. Those are the 8 kind of places that you want to move. And in order to do that, you actually have to rely on the X values. So W on a keyboard typically works for X. You could also use the up arrows. And now if I have, up is Y. And someone once asked, why do we use change Y by 10? Well, set Y by to 10 would just keep it going to the place where Y is 10, versus change Y means to increase it from wherever it's at by 10. So we use the change Y by 10, and now when we use it, it goes up. I can duplicate this and put it down here and change the value. S is right below it, which is commonly used. And to go down, remember, we use -10. And now I have the ability to move up and down. I can further duplicate these and move them down here and say I'm going to use A and F, or D, excuse me. And of course, these right now would be moving on the Y, which A doesn't. A is supposed to move us left, and D is supposed to move us right. And in order to move to the left, that is -10, and to move to the right is +10. So we have it all now, and we can move kind of any which direction we want to. And so that is kind of how we do motion, and you notice it moves cornerwise up, right, down, down left, up, up. Yeah. So it can do all that. And so that's basically a typical setup. It has some if statements, it checks if a key is pressed, and it makes some movement based on those things. And we'll use this kind of concepts later when we get into kind of shooting and things like this. So again, the controls kind of detect input or do things repeatedly. That's typically them. You might notice this one here that says when I start clone, it has this neat little hump. And maybe you've seen it before because under the events there's a hump. And that's really because this is a event. And we'll talk more about that a bit later, but we're not going to worry about that today. So that's really all I wanted to show you today was the if else. And of course there is the wait until, which you could have it just wait until, for example, the key space is pressed. and it won't do anything. So it will just go through, it will move, and then it will wait for the key to be pressed, and then you can move again. And it will only work when you have the key pressed down, okay? It will, and the reason that works is because it goes through this loop. It goes check W, check S, just A, check D, and then wait. It will stop. It will not go back to the start until this wait is done. So that's one of the other things I want to show you. The last thing I want to show you is for the advanced people, or people that want to be more advanced is the way I should say that. People that want to go in and learn something cool is the ability to make your own block. And I'm going to call this the movement block. And blocks have, when you make them, have their own things. Notice we have two numbers we're kind of inputting here, a positive 10 and a negative 10. But if I wanted to change it, I would actually have to change it in 1, 2, 3, 4 locations, right? So I can actually add a number input, and we're going to call this speed. Okay? And it creates this thing here that has a speed value. And the neat thing about this is we can go to here and we can put it all in this. So we can call this the movement block, and movement has a speed, and we can actually drag this speed down. And we'll talk about how to work this. So I can then take this block over here and put it over here, and the movement is 1 or 10. And you'll notice now that it, excuse me, when I start the flag up, it moves. But when I press A and S, it doesn't move downwards. But what it's doing is it's basically saying, hey, go to this movement block and pass this number 10. And it puts this 10 here for speed, and all of these ones that have used the speed value will be 10. Now, if you remember, these are supposed to be negative. So the way we get around that is we can either do something like this, where we say 0 minus speed, which will give us 0 minus 10, which is negative 10. Or we can say negative 1 times speed, which will give us negative 1 times any number is the negative part of that number. And that will give us the negative values, and of course now it moves like that. And so that's one way we can do it. The other way we could actually do it is we could, if we wanted to be a bit different about it, is we could edit this block, and we could add in, let's change this to positive, and we could add another number input, and we could call this one negative. Okay? And now we can just put the negative here. Let's get rid of these speed guys. And we can put the positive, negative, and positive here. Get rid of these speeds. And now what it will do is you can just pass in the 10 for both of them, and it will change the speeds to move at 10. And this is, oops, negative should be negative 10. My mistake. And what this will do is move them at that speed. Now, why is this helpful? Well, if you remember before when this was in there, we had to change the value 4 times. And when you have lots and lots of movement, that can sometimes become a problem. Now, if we want to change the speed, we can just type it in here, and the speed will change for us automatically. So really what this is doing is it's going, hey, forever, go check out movement. And under movement, it says, hey, if key W is pressed, change by positive, which you passed in right there. If S is pressed, change by negative, which was passed in right there. And it keeps repeating through these steps. So that's an advanced feature you can use. We will be required to use them a bit later, but for now, it's just something that you can do. Okay? So that's it for today, and when we come back next time, we'll be learning how to make an enemy, which I think is pretty cool.